The scrape of a metal chair across the patio cut through the cafe's morning hum like a knife across glass. Gasps echoed from nearby tables as the man in the leather jacket shoved it hard, sending it skidding toward the small girl in the wheelchair. Before anyone could scream, before coffee cups even hit the ground, a large dog, an aging German shepherd, moved with surprising speed. His body slid between the chair and the girl like a trained shield, absorbing the impact with the weight of experience. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply stood tall and still, his head lowered slightly, his eyes locked on the man. The biker froze. His hand was still in midair, fingers flexing with some dumb instinct to test the dog. But his smirk faltered. Something in the dog's stance, controlled, calm, and utterly fearless, made the man hesitate. A woman near the door stood up, her voice cutting through the silence. "Leave the child alone." Every eye on the patio had turned now, fork suspended mid-bite, phone slowly rising to record. No one was sure what had just happened. No one knew where this was going. But something was off, not just with the man, but with the way the dog had reacted. It wasn't panic. It was precision. The girl in the wheelchair, no older than 9, didn't cry. Her hands gripped the sides of her chair, her face pale but composed. Her eyes flicked toward the German shepherd standing inches from her knees, his broad frame still blocking her completely. The dog didn't move. He didn't even blink. He was waiting. The biker's lips twisted as if he was about to say something sarcastic, but he caught himself. Instead, he turned, shaking his head, and muttered something no one could hear as he walked away, back toward the table where 2 other bikers sat watching in silence. The girl exhaled just once and placed a trembling hand on the dog's back. He lowered himself slowly, like a soldier standing down. No one moved for a moment. Then someone whispered, "What the hell just happened?" And from a far corner of the cafe, the manager, who had been watching everything from behind the glass, picked up the phone. 3 hours earlier, that same cafe patio had been filled with laughter, clinking cups, and the scent of cinnamon scones. People had greeted each other by name. The barista knew every regular's order. And in the quiet corner near the railing, the little girl with the braids had been feeding pieces of blueberry muffin to her dog. He had worn a vest with a faded patch. Service companion, do not pet. No one had expected the calm of that morning to unravel. No one had noticed when the 3 motorcycles pulled up beyond the iron fence. And no one, certainly not the girl, had expected that a man from someone's broken past would walk to the patio gates and bring everything crashing back to the surface. But the dog had known. He had sensed something the moment the engines rumbled to a stop. Something in the scent, the rhythm of the man's footsteps, the tension in the air. The kind of thing you can't train for, but that some dogs, and only a few people, never forget. What happened next would change everything. For the man, the girl, and the dog who had already saved more lives than anyone knew. But first, let's go back to the beginning, back to that sunny morning. Before the growl, before the chair scraped the concrete, before a stranger tried to test the wrong dog. Back to where it all started, with a little girl named Emma, a dog named Ranger, and a memory that refused to stay buried. Emma Carter wasn't always a quiet girl in the corner seat. Before the accident, before the wheelchair, before the silence, she was the kind of child who asked more questions than adults could answer. She laughed with her whole chest, sprinted instead of walked, and wore mismatched socks because she said they kept life interesting. Her dad used to call her his little storm, beautiful, unpredictable, and full of life. But that storm had settled into stillness. She was 9 now, and most of her days began and ended in a wheelchair. A medical seatbelt held her waist in place, and the blue cushion beneath her had become an extension of her body. Her legs hadn't moved since the car crash that took her mother and left her spine bruised beyond repair. Her father, Noah Carter, survived that wreck, but only for 3 months more. A second tragedy. Quieter this time. An explosion during a training operation. No headlines, just a folded flag. A knock on the door, and a girl too young to understand why the world kept getting smaller. She now lived with her father's older sister, Grace, a retired ER nurse with the kind of strict warmth that came from a life spent saving people who didn't always want saving. Grace wasn't great with hugs, But she made the best oatmeal in the county and never once complained when Emma had night terrors. They'd moved to a quiet town with a library that smelled like old paper and a cafe that served hot chocolate with extra whipped cream if you asked nicely. Emma came to the Rosewood Cafe every Tuesday morning. It was their routine. The same corner table, the same soft blanket across her knees, the same old dog at her side. His name was Ranger. People often assumed he was just a comfort animal, maybe adopted from a shelter. But Ranger had a history most humans couldn't match. His large frame, salt and pepper muzzle, and deliberate movements made him look old and slow. But those who looked closer saw something else: discipline, purpose, scars. Ranger wasn't a pet. He was Emma's service companion. And before that, he'd been something far more. Long before Emma ever knew his name, Ranger had served overseas, not as a weapon, but as a rescuer. Trained in search and detection, he had pulled men from rubble, sniffed out hidden explosives, and once, if the story Grace had been told was true, found a trapped child beneath a collapsed compound in Afghanistan. He had also saved Logan Pierce. But Emma didn't know that. Not yet. Ranger had come into her life as a final gift from her father. Arranged weeks before his death, Noah had called in a favor from someone the military had nearly forgotten and asked that his old partner be reassigned. He's not just a dog. Noah had sent the message to Grace. He's family. He'll know how to take care of her when I can't. The paperwork had taken longer than expected, and Ranger arrived just a few days after Noah's funeral. Emma hadn't spoken to anyone for a week. But when Ranger walked into the room, carrying nothing but silence and a vest with faded Velcro patches, something shifted. She looked at him. He sat down. And from that moment, they were a team. Ranger wore his service harness like armor. It held a medical pouch, a GPS tracker, and a discreet pull handle Emma used to help transfer herself in and out of her chair. But what mattered more was what couldn't be seen. Ranger knew how to wake Emma from nightmares without startling her. He sensed her pain before she said a word. And when crowds pressed too close, he moved between her and the world, solid, still, and silent. Some days, Grace joked that the dog understood Emma better than any of them did. Maybe he did. At school, most kids didn't know what to say to the girl who couldn't play tag anymore. Adults spoke to her slowly, like her legs had taken her voice too. But Ranger never changed. He stayed who he was. And because of that, Emma stayed who she was too, at least in pieces. She still asked strange questions sometimes, like the one she'd asked that very morning, just before everything happened. "Do you think dogs remember their past lives?" she'd said, breaking a muffin into tiny pieces. Grace had smiled, unsure whether to answer with science or softness. But Ranger had looked up, just briefly, as if the question wasn't so strange after all. And in a few hours, Emma would learn the answer, because for dogs like Ranger, some memories never fade. The Rosewood Cafe was alive with its usual Tuesday rhythm. Plates clinked softly against porcelain. Steam drifted lazily from mugs of early morning coffee, and gentle laughter floated in from a nearby booth where two elderly women shared a newspaper and a slice of peach pie. The air smelled of cinnamon and toasted bread, and for a moment, the world felt exactly the way it should, safe, predictable, and gently warm. Emma sat at her usual corner table, sipping hot chocolate through a biodegradable straw. Grace was inside placing their regular order: one black coffee, 2 blueberry scones, and a side of fresh fruit for Emma. Outside, the sun filtered through the cafe's striped awning, casting long stripes across the girl's blanket-covered legs, and the sleek fur of Ranger, who lay beside her in a perfect downstay. That's when the first engine growled. Emma's head turned instinctively. Ranger's ears twitched and his eyes narrowed. The noise grew louder, then multiplied. 3 motorcycles rolled up along the curb just beyond the cafe's iron patio fence. They were loud but not reckless, and yet something about the way they came to a synchronized stop made every conversation slow. 3 men dismounted. The one in front stood taller than the others, broader in the shoulders and older. His hair was close-cropped, peppered with gray at the sides. He wore a leather jacket that looked like it had survived more than a few storms, and thick military boots that hit the ground with practiced purpose. The man removed his helmet slowly, like someone used to surveying territory before entering it. His eyes swept across the patio. Cool, assessing alert. That man was Logan Pierce. He hadn't come for trouble. At least, he didn't think he had. But trouble had a way of finding him lately, especially in quiet places like this. Inside the cafe, Grace didn't see him. But outside, Ranger had already noticed. His body tensed, not alarmed, not aggressive, just focused. His eyes tracked the man's every step. He didn't growl. He didn't move. But Emma felt the shift immediately. "What is it, boy?" she whispered, her fingers brushing lightly over his back. Logan's gaze brushed past the patio patrons, some of whom had turned to look. His eyes flicked past Emma, paused, then snapped back. He didn't move right away. He just stood at the edge of the fence, staring. Something about the dog. It wasn't the harness or the alert posture. It was the way the dog looked at him, steady, unblinking like recognition. Ranger didn't blink either. "Yo, Logan, we gonna grab a seat or what?" One of the bikers called, already halfway through lighting a cigarette. Logan waved him off, but his eyes remained locked on the dog. Slowly, he stepped through the open patio gate and made his way toward the empty table closest to Emma's. Emma's small fingers curled around her cup. She wasn't scared. Not exactly. But something in her chest fluttered. She'd seen a lot of people look at Ranger before. Curious, admiring, even intimidated. But never like this. This man wasn't looking at a dog. He was looking at a ghost. Logan pulled out a chair 2 tables away and dropped into it without a word. A young waitress approached nervously. "Just coffee," he said, not looking up. "Black." When she left, Logan leaned forward, his elbows on the table, hands clasped. He wasn't staring anymore, but Emma could still feel his attention. It pressed like weather, subtle, shifting, undeniable. Ranger hadn't moved a muscle. After a long moment, Logan turned to the man across from him. Cal, a fellow veteran, now part of the biker crew, and nodded slightly toward Emma and Ranger. "That dog's not just trained," he muttered. "He's mission-bred. I'd bet anything on it." Cal shrugged. "Looks like a service animal to me. Leave it." But Logan couldn't. He didn't know why, not yet. But something about the dog wouldn't let him go. A memory was rising, just out of reach, like smoke curling around a name he hadn't said in years. The waitress returned with his coffee. Logan took a long sip and winced. Too bitter. He said nothing. 2 tables away, Emma tried to open her book. The same page stared back at her again and again. Ranger's body remained between her and the man, silent but deliberate. He wasn't afraid, but he was ready. And Logan, who hadn't recognized the girl, hadn't seen the chair, hadn't yet connected all the pieces, found himself unable to look away from the dog who seemed to know him better than he knew himself. Logan Pierce hadn't slept through the night in over a decade. Even when his body shut down from exhaustion, his mind refused to stay quiet. Dreams didn't come to him gently. They arrived like ambushes. Explosions behind his eyelids, voices calling out from sand-colored corridors, the hot smell of metal and blood that clung to the inside of his nose long after he left the war behind. If you asked him what broke him, he wouldn't know where to start. Maybe it was Kandahar. Maybe it was the rooftop that collapsed under his team's weight. Or maybe it was what came after, when everyone else went home and picked up where they left off, while Logan just floated between jobs, between relationships, between versions of himself. He never seemed to land anywhere for long. But before everything unraveled, Logan had been someone else. He was 25 when he joined the Army K-9 unit, already good with dogs, already rough around the edges, already running from something. But in that unit, he found something close to belonging. He learned to read body language like second nature. He could see tension in a dog's tail, or danger in the way dust lifted off a faraway ridge. And for a while it was enough. Then came Noah Carter. Clean-cut, straight-talking, always with a book tucked in his pack, and a photo of his baby daughter taped inside his helmet. Noah wasn't just Logan's commanding officer. He was his anchor, the kind of man who could calm a storm with a look, who never asked someone to do something he wouldn't do himself. In a place where everything was gray and uncertain, Noah had a moral compass that never blinked. They became brothers not by blood, but by sand, sweat, and survival. And one morning, in the shattered remains of an abandoned village on the outskirts of Jalalabad, they found a dog. He was barely more than a pup, matted fur, one ear torn, ribs showing through his dusty coat. But he didn't cower. He watched them with steady eyes, refusing to look away. It was Logan who knelt first, offering a piece of his protein bar. The dog didn't hesitate. He took it gently and sat down beside him like they'd always known each other. Logan named him Ranger. Noah said they couldn't keep him. We don't have orders. We don't even know if he's clean. But when the IED detection unit's equipment failed a week later, and Ranger barked at a patch of ground no one had flagged, Noah changed his mind. They started training him, unofficially at first. Logan handled the commands. Noah handled the paperwork. By month 2, Ranger was tracking missing civilians and sniffing out danger like he'd been born for it. But not all stories get happy endings. On patrol one afternoon, Logan and Noah moved into a bombed-out warehouse to retrieve a signal beacon. The intel had been wrong. The floor beneath them gave out. A secondary collapse buried Logan under concrete and beams, his lungs burning, ears ringing. He remembered the weight, the darkness, the scream that didn't make out his throat, and then scratching, barking, heat, breath. Ranger, the dog, had found him, dug through debris until his muzzle was bleeding. And Noah had dragged Logan out from under the rubble with his bare hands. Logan had a fractured rib and a busted knee. Noah had a fractured spine. He died 3 weeks later from complications. Infection, internal bleeding. Too fast, too sudden. Logan never forgave himself. Not for living, not for walking away, not for leaving Ranger behind. When he returned stateside, the medals felt like pity. The ceremonies felt like lies. He tried to visit Noah's family once to tell them thank you or sorry, or maybe just to be seen. But he never made it past the driveway. And Ranger? He assumed the dog had been reassigned, retired, lost in the system like so many others. But now, as Logan sat on the patio of a quiet cafe in a town he didn't even mean to visit, staring into the eyes of a dog that hadn't blinked in 15 minutes, the memories surged forward like a tide. It couldn't be. Not after all these years. But Ranger was alive, and sitting next to a little girl who looked like the photo Noah used to carry in his helmet. Logan's fingers twitched around his coffee cup. He hadn't just stumbled into a cafe. He had stumbled into the past. And for the first time in a very long time, he wasn't sure what to do next. Logan Pierce didn't plan on getting up. He told himself he'd just drink the coffee, maybe get a second cup, then head out before the weight in his chest got any heavier. But he couldn't stop watching the dog. Ranger. He still hadn't moved. Not a single twitch. His body remained square beside the girl's wheelchair, his head high, ears angled forward. There was no growling, no raised hackles, just a silent vigilance that made Logan's jaw clench. Because he knew that posture, knew it better than most. It was how Ranger had looked the night they'd gone into the warehouse in Jalalabad, when Logan's had told him something was wrong. But orders said move forward. Ranger had warned them then. He was warning him now. The difference was, this time, Logan wasn't sure who the danger was. The waitress returned to clear a table. Logan used the moment to stand. He felt Cal glance up from his phone, eyes narrowing. "What are you doing?" Cal muttered. "Just stretching my legs," Logan said, brushing invisible dust from his jacket. "You're staring at that kid and her dog like you're casing the place. Sit down." But Logan had already taken a step. Then another. The patio's conversations dulled, as if the very act of him standing created a subtle shift in air pressure. Logan didn't mean to make it dramatic, but something about Ranger pulled him like a gravity well. Like there was something unfinished between them, and only this dog held the answer. He approached slowly, hands relaxed at his sides, boots scuffing lightly against the concrete. Emma looked up. She saw the tall man from before, the one who hadn't stopped watching them, whose eyes looked like they belonged to someone carrying too many memories. His face was unreadable, but the tension in his jaw gave him away. "Good morning," she said politely, just like Aunt Grace had taught her. Her voice was small but steady. Logan nodded once, eyes dropping to the dog. That's some dog you've got there. His name is Ranger. The name hit like a blow to the chest. Logan swallowed the lump rising in his throat. Is he trained? Yes, sir. He's my service dog. Ranger's head turned slightly, eyes locking on Logan's. Not threatening, not warm, just watching. I've worked with dogs like him, Logan murmured, squatting down slowly to Ranger's eye level. He knows what I am. Emma didn't move, but her hand dropped instinctively to Ranger's back, her fingers curling into the soft fur near the harness strap. Please don't touch him without asking, she said gently but firmly. He's on duty. Logan froze mid-motion. His hand hovered a few inches from Ranger's muzzle. Ranger didn't snap, didn't snarl, but his ears pinned back just slightly, subtle but clear, acknowledged, respected, and still a warning. Logan slowly pulled his hand back. Right, he said. Of course. From the other end of the patio, someone cleared their throat. Callaghan, probably. Logan ignored it. Where'd you get him? He asked. He was my dad's, Emma replied. He gave Ranger to me before he passed. Logan's knees nearly buckled. His breath caught, so quiet Emma almost didn't hear it. She tilted her head, watching him. Your dad, Logan said hoarsely. Was his name? Noah. Emma blinked, startled. How did you know that? Logan didn't answer right away. He stood back up, turning halfway as if to leave, but his feet didn't cooperate. Ranger and we knew each other a long time ago, he finally said, before he was yours. Emma's brow furrowed. You trained him? Not alone, Logan said softly. Your dad and I did. Together. A pause passed between them, long and heavy. Ranger stood slowly. He didn't bark. He didn't move toward Logan. He simply stepped forward, not an inch closer to the man, but enough to position himself fully between Emma and him. His body was still, but the message was unmistakable. She's mine now. Logan understood. He took a slow step back. Then another, hands raised, not in surrender, but in something that looked a lot like respect. I didn't come to cause trouble, he said. I didn't know it was you. Emma didn't speak. She just placed her hand gently on Ranger's head, steadying him like a thought made real. From across the patio, Grace returned carrying a tray, freezing when she saw the scene. Her eyes locked on Logan, her mouth opened, but before she could speak, Logan turned and walked away. The past had found him, and Ranger, without growling, barking, or biting, had delivered his message. Some loyalty never dies. The Glendale Police Department didn't look like much from the outside. Just a single-story brick building with faded flags fluttering out front and a buzz lawn that hadn't seen rain in weeks. A place most people pass by without a second glance. Logan Pierce stared at the front door for a long time before going in. The lobby was cool and too quiet, with old chairs arranged in a lopsided semicircle and a vending machine that hummed louder than necessary. At the front desk, a young officer looked up, then down, then back up, his eyes scanning the man's worn leather jacket, military boots, and that unmistakable look of someone who had seen more than they wanted to admit. Can I help you, sir? Logan nodded slowly. I need to speak to someone about an incident at Rosewood Café earlier today. The officer blinked. Were you involved? Logan hesitated, then said the words he'd been practicing since he walked out of the cafe. I think I frightened a child, not on purpose, but I need to make it right. The officer's expression shifted. Have a seat. Logan waited in silence, his hands folded tightly between his knees. His coffee-stained jacket lay in his lap, the weight of it suddenly unbearable. His heart thudded like a slow drumbeat. He wasn't sure if this was about clearing his conscience or chasing something he'd lost a long time ago. A woman in uniform eventually came out to meet him. Her name tag read Captain Brooks. You're Logan Pierce? She asked. I am. You're the man from the cafe? Yes. She studied him for a moment, then gestured down the hallway. Follow me. They walked past bulletin boards filled with missing person flyers, old community event posters, and faded photos of K-9 units from years gone by. Logan didn't speak until they were inside a small interview room with pale blue walls and a single table that looked like it had seen too many arguments. "I didn't go there looking for trouble," Logan began, sitting down slowly. "But when I saw that dog..." He trailed off. Captain Brooks waited, letting the silence do the work. "I knew him," Logan finally said. "The dog, Ranger. I trained him years ago with Noah Carter." At that name, the captain's face changed. "You served with Officer Carter?" "I did," Logan said. "We were in the same K-9 unit. Overseas. He was my best friend." Captain Brooks nodded, her voice softer now. "Emma Carter is his daughter." "I didn't know that," Logan admitted. "Not when I walked into that cafe. But when she said his name, when I saw a Ranger, I remembered everything." He looked down at his hands, which had begun to tremble. "I didn't hurt her," he said. "I swear. I couldn't process it. Seeing the dog, realizing who she was. Everything hit at once." "We've had calls," the captain said gently. "Witnesses were concerned. Some were filming. But no one reported an actual crime, just a lot of tension." Logan nodded. "That sounds about right." "Why are you here then?" she asked. Logan looked up, and for the first time, his voice cracked. "Because I owe them more than silence. Because I owe Noah more than disappearing. And because that little girl, she looked at me like she wasn't afraid. Like she saw something in me I haven't seen in years. I need to tell her the truth." Captain Brooks watched him for a long moment. Then she stood. "Wait here." She left the room, and for what felt like a lifetime, Logan sat alone. 10 minutes later, the door opened. Emma and Grace entered, accompanied by a quiet, older officer who stood respectfully in the corner. Emma was still in her wheelchair. Ranger was beside her, alert but calm. His tail thumped once. Logan stood instinctively, then froze, unsure what to say. Emma broke the silence. "You really knew my dad?" "I did," Logan said, his voice rough. "He saved my life once. More than once, really. He trusted Ranger more than anyone, and he gave him to you, didn't he?" Emma nodded. "I'm sorry I scared you," Logan said. "I wasn't thinking clearly. That dog, he brought it all back." Emma's gaze was steady. "Ranger remembered you. That's why he didn't bite." The room was still. Grace crossed her arms but said nothing. "I don't know what happens next," Logan said. "But I'm here now, for however long you'll have me." Captain Brooks stepped forward. "Let's start with the truth. All of it, then we'll figure out the rest." And in that small interview room, beneath the hum of flickering lights and decades of unspoken grief, the past finally stepped into the present. The air in the interview room had finally settled into something that almost resembled calm. Grace was still cautious, but no longer on edge. Emma had even allowed herself a small smile, tentative but real, when Logan shared memory of her dad sneaking jerky from his rations to feed Ranger under the table. And Ranger, loyal as ever, lay quietly by her side, his breathing steady, ears flicking now and then in quiet alertness. Then came the knock. It wasn't sharp, not loud, but it held urgency, the kind that made everyone in the room sit up a little straighter. Captain Brooks opened the door. A young officer leaned in and whispered something, fast and low. Whatever it was, it made her posture shift instantly. Her voice lowered, but Logan could still make out a few clipped words. "Yes, apartment complex off Cedar, any weapons?" The officer nodded. "We believe so." Brooks turned back into the room, eyes settling on Logan. "There's a situation," she said, "and it involves someone you know." Before he could ask, the door behind her burst open again, this time without warning. It was Mac. He was breathless, helmet still dangling from one hand, hair wild like he hadn't stopped moving since the last time they'd seen each other at the cafe. "Logan, man, we got a problem." "Mac!" Logan stood. "What's going on?" "It's Cal," Mac said, the words tumbling out. "That guy from a bar last night, the one that got in your face about the unit, you remember?" Logan's stomach dropped. "Weaver." Mac nodded quickly. "He followed Cal home. Showed up with 2 other guys. He's got him trapped in his apartment. Called me from a bathroom. Said they were armed, talking crazy stuff, blaming Cal for harboring a traitor. Logan went pale. They're calling me that? Mac didn't answer. He didn't need to. Captain Brooks was already moving. Dispatch is sending units. But if this Weaver is the same man I've heard about, unstable, violent, and fixated, you might be the only one who can talk him down. Logan ran a hand over his face. This is my fault. No, Brooks said firmly. This is on Weaver. But how we handle it now, that's on us. I need to go, Logan said. Let me ride with your team. Grace stepped forward. Absolutely not. You just showed up out of nowhere, stirred all this up, and now you want to throw yourself into a hostage situation. It's not about me, Logan said, voice calm. It's about Cal. He's a good man who stood up for me when he didn't have to. Now he's paying for it. Emma looked up from her chair, her voice clear and quiet. Can Ranger help? Everyone turned. Brooks blinked. He's a service dog, not an active K-9 anymore. Emma nodded, but he still remembers. Mac looked between them. Weaver's wearing the same old army jacket. Cal said, he spilled beer on it during the argument. If you had something with his scent. Logan met Brooks' eyes. We could track him if he slips out before your team gets there, or confirm if he's still in the building. Ranger stood slowly, as if he already understood. Emma looked up at her dog, then at Logan. He can go with you, just for this, but you keep him safe. Logan nodded, stunned. I will, I swear. Grace opened her mouth to protest, but something in her niece's face made her stop. A strength she hadn't seen in months. A decision made. Captain Brooks snapped into action. Let's move. Officer Daniels, secure Ranger's vest and a lead. We leave in 5. Logan turned to Emma. Thank you, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Your dad would be proud of you. Emma didn't smile. She just nodded, her hand resting gently on Ranger's head. Bring Cal home. As the police unit mobilized outside, lights flashing in the afternoon haze, Logan climbed into the back of a cruiser, Ranger by his side. For the first time in years, Logan didn't feel like a man running from the past. This time, he was running towards something worth saving. The police convoy moved like a silent river through Glendale's backstreets, lights flashing but sirens off, a tactical decision to avoid spooking whoever was inside the apartment. Captain Brooks rode up front, relaying updates to dispatch. Logan sat in the second cruiser, eyes locked on the road ahead, Ranger beside him on the backseat floor, ears high, posture alert. They had just passed Cedar Avenue when Officer Daniels' voice crackled over the radio. We're close. That's the complex. 3rd unit on the 2nd floor. The building came into view. A tired 2-story structure with peeling paint and a dented mailbox out front. No signs of a struggle. No shouting. But Logan knew better than to trust quiet. Cal was in there. Trapped. We need to confirm Weaver's still inside. Brooks said, Logan, you ready? He nodded. Rangers already keyed in. Daniels passed a worn gray t-shirt. Cal's, soaked with the beer Weaver had spilled during their bar argument. Logan held it out. Ranger sniffed deeply once, twice, and then his entire body shifted. The casual stillness disappeared. He stood, nose twitching, tail low, eyes locked forward. He's got it, Logan said. Let's go. Ranger led the way, moving low and fast across the lawn. His leash was extended long, handled by Daniels with practiced ease. Emma's condition required Ranger to be precise and responsive, but this was different. This was a return to his roots. They reached the stairwell. Ranger stopped briefly at the bottom step, sniffing the air, then bolted up to the 2nd floor landing. He didn't pause at Cal's apartment. He moved past it, to the far corner, where a rusted fire escape clung to back of the building. He's picking something up, Daniel said into his radio. Rear alley. Repeat. Movement at fire escape. Officers repositioned instantly, fanning out. Logan stayed close to Daniels, watching Ranger's every move. Then, a sharp voice cut through the radio static. Visual on 3 suspects. Rear exit. One appears to be restrained. That was Cal. They were trying to escape. Engage! Brooks ordered. Surround the van. Secure the area. Everything blurred. Officers sprinted into the alley. Weapons drawn but lowered. Commands shouted, "Drop your weapon." Hands where I can see them. Echoing between concrete walls. But Weaver didn't listen. He grabbed Cal tighter, one arm around his throat, the other holding a pistol aimed straight toward the approaching officers. His face was flushed, eyes wild, and then he saw Logan. "You," he shouted, voice cracked with fury. "You left them. You should have died, not my brother." Logan stepped forward slowly, hands raised. "It wasn't your brother's fault. It wasn't mine. That's war, Weaver. Let Cal go." But Weaver was shaking now, rage boiling over. The gun shifted from Cal's head to Logan's chest. In that split second, the world moved. And so did Ranger. He broke free from Daniel's grip like a bolt of lightning, tearing across the alley. Logan shouted, "Ranger, no!" But it was already too late. The gun fired. The sound cracked through the air, followed by screams, scrambling feet, and chaos. When the dust settled, Weaver was on the ground, tackled by two officers. Cal lay shaking, pulled to safety by a third. But Logan didn't see any of it. He was on his knees beside Ranger. The dog lay motionless, one side darkened by blood. He leapt between Logan and the bullet. No hesitation, no sound, just pure instinct. His breathing was shallow, eyes flickering. But he was alive. "Stay with me," Logan whispered, pressing a hand against the wound. "Please, boy, just stay." Captain Brooks radioed for emergency veterinary support. Daniels ran for the cruiser, clearing the back seat. They didn't wait for a transport van. There wasn't time. As they carried Ranger into the car, Logan refused to let go. He sat beside him, stroking his fur, whispering promises through clenched teeth. "You did good. You did real good." Ranger didn't respond, but his tail thumped once against the seat. Just once. Back at the scene, officers debriefed. Cal was bruised but stable. Weaver was in custody. No civilians hurt. But every officer present knew the cost had been high, because the one who'd stopped the worst from happening hadn't even been on duty. He'd just been loyal. As the cruiser peeled away toward Glendale Veterinary Emergency Center, sirens now blaring, Logan held Ranger's head in his lap. This time, he wasn't the one being saved. This time, Ranger had come back for him. The waiting room at Glendale Veterinary Emergency Center was still and cold, despite the buzzing fluorescence and clatter from behind double doors. Logan sat hunched forward in one of the plastic chairs, elbows on his knees, blood still dried on the sleeves of his jacket. Not his own, Ranger's. He hadn't spoken since the ride over, hadn't blinked much either. Across from him, Grace held a foam cup of lukewarm coffee, untouched. She didn't know what to say. For once, the words, always ready in her nurse's mind, refused to come. Emma, seated between them in her wheelchair, stared straight ahead, her hands folded in her lap, knuckles pale. She looked calm, too calm, the kind of calm a child learns when they've already seen the worst life can do. "He'll make it," Logan said finally, breaking the silence. His voice was hoarse, like it had been dragged over gravel. "He's strong." Emma nodded. "He always comes back." The double doors opened. A woman in green scrubs stepped out. Her name tag read Dr. Morales, and her face was lined with exhaustion. But there was a soft smile in the corner of her mouth. "He's stable," she said. Logan closed his eyes for the first time in hours and exhaled like someone had loosened a rope around his chest. "He's resting now. We were able to remove the bullet and stop the bleeding." The vet continued. "There's some damage to the shoulder muscles, but nothing that can't heal with time and care." Emma looked up. "Can I see him?" Dr. Morales hesitated, then smiled. Just for a moment. Inside the recovery area, Ranger lay on a padded table, covered with a heated blanket, and 4 ran from his leg, and his shoulder was wrapped tightly, but his breathing was steady. When Emma's wheelchair rolled close, his tail thumped lightly, twice this time. Emma reached out and touched his fur gently. "You're okay," she whispered. "You did it." Logan stood beside her, hands in his pockets. His voice, when it came, was softer than anyone had ever heard it. "I don't deserve him," he said. Grace stepped beside him. "That's not true." He looked at her, his expression raw. "I walked away. From everyone. From Noah. I shut it all out. And somehow, that dog still remembered me. Still protected me." Grace's tone was quiet but steady. "So maybe that means it's not too late." They returned home just before sunrise. The house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft clicking of Ranger's nails on the hardwood floor as Logan helped him settle onto a cushion mat in the corner of the living room. Emma rolled in beside him, watching every step, every movement, like her entire world hinged on each breath the dog took. Grace made tea. She didn't offer to anyone, just left mugs on the table and sat down. Logan looked around the small kitchen, the framed photos of Noah and Emma on the wall, the pile of coloring books still left on the counter. He cleared his throat. "I don't have much to offer," he said. "I'm not fixed. I'm still figuring out how to be around people again. But if you'll have me, I'd like to stay." Emma looked at him. "Dad said you're like a brother." Logan's eyes glistened. He was the best man I ever knew. "You can stay," she said simply, "but no more disappearing." He nodded. "Deal." Grace didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she reached out and placed her hand over Logan's. "You showed up when it counted," she said. "That's more than most." Over the next few days, something quiet and healing settled into their lives. Logan took over Ranger's physical therapy under the vet's supervision, applying the same patience he'd once used training rescue dogs in the field. Emma began to smile more and even laugh, soft at first, but real. Grace caught herself humming while washing dishes. The house was still full of pain, but now it also had purpose. One morning, Logan found Emma sitting with Ranger by the window, brushing his fur gently. "He's going to walk again," she said. Logan nodded. "So are we." And in that small home, where grief had once hollowed the halls, something new began to grow. Not perfect, not easy, but real. A second chance. And this time, no one would walk away. 6 months later, the leaves in Glendale had turned to fire. The park was scattered with gold and crimson, the breeze crisp but kind. A white canopy had been set up near the oak trees, decorated with hand-drawn posters, yellow ribbons, and a banner that read, "To our hero, thank you, Ranger." People had gathered from every corner of the community. Police officers in uniform, veterans with service pins on their jackets, families who had never met Emma or Logan, but had followed the story in the local paper. Cal was there too, arms still in a soft brace, smiling easily, standing beside Grace, who looked more at ease than she had in years. At the center of it all sat Emma, her wheelchair tucked beside a low wooden bench where Ranger rested, calm and alert, his scarred shoulder now mostly hidden beneath a freshly groomed coat. The ceremony was informal, but no less meaningful. A small podium had been placed beneath the largest tree. Behind it stood Captain Brooks, holding a velvet box and a microphone that squeaked once before settling into a soft hum. "Today," she began, "we honor a veteran of a different kind. One who never asked for recognition, who served without question, who protected not only in uniform, but long after he'd earned the right to rest." She paused and looked down at Ranger. "He didn't choose this life," she said, "but he chose to be brave in it." Applause broke out, soft at first, then rising. Captain Brooks motioned to Emma. "Would you like to do the honors?" Emma nodded and wheeled herself forward. Logan stepped beside her, holding the small silver medallion, inscribed with Ranger's name and the words, "For valor beyond duty." Emma clipped it to the center of Ranger's harness, right above the faded patch that still read Service Companion. "Do not pet." Ranger shifted just slightly, sitting taller, almost as if he understood. From the crowd, someone called out, "Speech." Emma blushed. She glanced at Logan, who smiled and gave a little shrug. She turned back to the gathering and cleared her throat. "I don't know how to give speeches," she said, "but I know how to say thank you." Her voice was small but clear. "Ranger saved my life in ways most people will never see. He helped me get out of bed when I didn't want to. He woke me up when I had bad dreams. And he kept me from feeling invisible." She looked down at him, eyes shining. And when I needed him most, he didn't hesitate. The crowd fell completely silent. She took a breath. But he's not just my dog. He's a soldier. He's a friend. And now, he belongs to all of you, too. More applause, and a few quiet tears. Afterward, they shared warm cider and oatmeal cookies under the trees. Children took photos with Ranger, who accepted the attention with quiet dignity. Cal handed out flyers for a new local K-9 training program being launched in Ranger's name, offering therapy and mobility support animals for children with disabilities. Logan stood a little apart from the crowd, hands in his jacket pockets, watching everything unfold with quiet awe. Grace walked up beside him. "You did good," she said. He chuckled softly. "I think Ranger did most of the heavy lifting." Grace smiled. "Maybe, but someone had come back. Someone had to stay." He nodded, still learning how to do that. Emma joined them a moment later, rolling up with a carved wooden box in her lap. Inside was a second medal, one she and Logan had made together. It wasn't official, but it meant everything. To Logan, it read, "For showing up." She handed it to him without a word. Logan took it, swallowed hard, and blinked away the tears that caught him off guard. "Thanks, kid," he said softly. "Guess you got stuck with me now." Emma smiled. "We didn't get stuck. We chose you." Later that evening, long after the crowd had left and the sun dipped low behind the trees, Emma, Logan, and Grace sat on a picnic blanket near the oak. Ranger lay between them, his head resting gently on Emma's footrest, eyes closed, tail still thumping once in a while like a slow heartbeat. No one said much. They didn't need to, because sometimes healing doesn't roar. Sometimes it sits quietly in a park on a crisp autumn day, wrapped in old scars and new beginnings. And sometimes family isn't something you're born into. It's something you fight for, and something that, if you're lucky, finds its way back to you when you need it most.